Hi, welcome to the Stop Blackwater presentation. My name is Raymond Lutz, and I'm coordinator of the Citizens Oversight Projects, or COPS. I'm going to be your host today. I have a technical background, and I don't live in Potrero, but I'll describe how I got involved in this a bit later. First, a quick outline of our presentation. I'm going to cover a history of the Prince family in Michigan and look a little bit of the history of military privatization. And then we're going to look at how Blackwater took advantage of that, looking at their North Carolina facility, the jungle training camp that they attempted to open up in the Philippines, and then their more recent intrusion into San Diego County. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about COPS itself. We're going to start in the southwest corner of Michigan. You see the red star on the map is at Holland. This is where originally, back in the late 1800s, the Dutch Reformed Church set up immigrated to. And this is the region where the Prince family got started. We're going to start with the father of the founder of Blackwater, and his name's Erik Prince, and he started the Prince Empire, Prince Industries in Holland, Michigan. Very successful in the auto parts industry, and you may actually have one of their products yourself. The lighted vanity mirror was the signature product of their company. That's how they made much of their money. Children Erik and Betsy grew up in Holland, underneath the evangelical leanings and teachings of his father. The Prince family very successful, and Betsy Prince, the daughter, ended up marrying the heir of the giant Amway fortune, Dick DeVoe of Amway Corporation. She became the chair of the Michigan State Republican Party. Had some disputes there over school vouchers, but then returned 2003 to 2005. Now, as I mentioned, Dick DeVoe is the son of the billionaire Amway Corporation founder Richard DeVoe. I understand he inherited $3 billion. And he is quite influential in the Republican Party. You can see some of his friends there. He attempted to basically buy the governorship in Michigan, spent a record $41 million to do so, but then lost, fortunately, to Jennifer Granholm in 2005. Now, this family has plenty of money, and so they wound up funding a lot of the very conservative takeover of our country. And one of these people that they funded is a gentleman by the name of Gary Bauer, founder of the Family Research Council, and he was also one of the founding members of the Project for the New American Century, which is the failed game plan used by the Bush administration after 9/11. The Prince family also funded James Dobson. He's one of the most conservative leaders, founding the Dominionist Family Research Council, which is also one of Gary Bauer's interests. One of his most notable things was he was after SpongeBob for being a homosexual. Thought that he should be banned. This is the type of thing the Prince family was funding. These families basically backed the neocon takeover of the GOP, giving a record $2.5 million to the party in 1994, and basically funded the Republicans, some of the most conservative Republicans, as you see the list: Jesse Helms, Ollie North, Richard Pombo, Rick Santorum, Tom DeLay. A lot of these have either been indicted or are now kicked out of office because they're just too extreme. Also, Erik helped Pat Buchanan in his quest for the presidency in 1992. This support of the very right-wing and Christian and evangelical movement continued from Edgar to his son Erik, as he was on the board of the Christian Freedom International, donated to lots of Christian causes, and supporting right-wing efforts to unite these groups in a theoconservative holy war. Now that you kind of know what the Prince family was like, we're going to turn over to some of the events leading up to Blackwater. And one of the most significant is the military privatization trend that was started under George H.W. Bush. Of course, Dick Cheney orchestrated this whole effort, reducing the military spending by a huge amount, and with his game plan being to allow Halliburton to take over a lot of logistical support services. And then, of course, he became CEO of the company that was going to profit from what his changes were. Those base closures continued during the Clinton era, and we wound up with inadequate training capability at the end of all this. And focusing in on Erik Prince, who was a Navy SEAL, very wealthy one at that. He was deployed into Haiti, the Middle East, Mediterranean, and founded Blackwater at the fairly young age of 27. Leads a fairly secretive life. Very difficult to get this picture. It's one of the few I could find of Erik. Well, in 1995, Erik's father, Edgar Prince, had a heart attack and died suddenly. The corporation was sold fairly quickly thereafter for $1.35 billion in cash to Johnson Controls, and Erik nets about $500 million. Later that year, Al Clark presented the concept of a training company to Erik, and then the Blackwater Lodge and Training Center was incorporated in 1996. A couple years later, they had a 6,000 to 7,000 acre training camp in the North Carolina area. This is the sign greeting people driving down the road. This primary facility of Blackwater is located in the Great Dismal Swamp of North Carolina. You can see it's just south of the border with Virginia. At the top of the map you can see Washington. So this is very conveniently located to the power centers of our country. Now, initially, Blackwater was providing tactical and weapons training to the military, government and law enforcement agencies specializing in hand-to-hand combat, rifle marksmanship, and pursuit driving. They also had this Are You Ready High, which I'll mention in a minute. Now, recruits were sometimes offered an exclusive contract where once they completed their training, they were required to work for Blackwater. Now, I heard something that was important the other day. These people were generally already trained by our own military, and this is somewhat of a finishing school. We've made our taxpayer investment in these people, and then Blackwater is using them for their own contracts at our expense. What we'll see is that over the next few years, Blackwater benefited from some of the biggest catastrophes in our nation's history. Whenever we have a catastrophe, they seem to benefit. The first one was the Columbine Massacre, and this was 1999. Shortly thereafter, several months later, they opened up a thing called Are You Ready High, a mock high school where SWAT team officers and other law enforcement can train to bring order to the violent youth of our nation. A few months later, Blackwater got probably one of its most important deals, the GSA contract. What this does is essentially allows anyone in the government to buy services and also gear from Blackwater. Some of the stuff would be, say, shooting range equipment, targets, and the like. basically they can do that without going through any kind of bidding process. Just look them up and make the purchase. Originally, it was estimated that they would earn $125,000 over a 5-year period. However, they've collected $111 million as of 2006. About that time, Al Clark, who had helped Erik Prince start Blackwater, decided to leave. Couldn't see eye to eye with Erik, and so he left at that point. Well, that was probably a bad move by Clark, because later that year we had another event that drove the success of Blackwater even higher. The attack on the USS Cole. Blackwater landed a $35.7 million no-bid contract with the Navy to conduct force protection training. And you've got to ask the question, why can't the Navy train their own sailors? Why do we have to go to a separate firm to do that? And of course, the big one of all time, 9/11, happened a bit later that year. Resulted in an explosion in war privatization, which was Cheney's game plan. As we look back from today, and we look at how much this war has been privatized, it's just breathtaking. Just that month, Blackwater got over $500,000 in contracts for training. So up to that point, we've been doing training, but Blackwater then made a transition in 2002, moved past training, and now was offering soldiers for hire. This was a brainchild of Jamie Smith, CIA operative. I'm not too sure which one he is in that photograph. This guy, Buzzy Krongard, was the guy who dealt the first contract to Blackwater. He's somewhat on suspicion by 9/11 theorists, because the bank that he headed until 1998 was responsible for many of the put options on United Airlines prior to 9/11. Now, these put options are basically wagers that the stock will fall, and they were never collected, but they were wondering why. How did they know that these airliner stock would fall so dramatically? And of course, it makes you wonder if they knew if 9/11 was right around the corner. Blackwater was trying to be the FedEx of security. First big contract in this regard was guarding L. Paul Bremer III. He was a guy who was in charge of all the reconstruction and dealing with the Iraqi concerns during the first year of the occupation. And Blackwater made $27.7 million on this contract. Baghdad was a lot more dangerous than expected, and so the military, when faced with this big task of guarding this one person, ended up hiring Blackwater. Now, even today, General Petraeus is being guarded by Blackwater over in Iraq, and it's just mind-boggling to me. You have the head of our military with all of the infrastructure at his disposal. Why can't our military guard this one man instead of having to hire an outside firm to do it? I just don't get it. Now, after this Fallujah incident, which I'll describe in a minute, as Bremer was leaving, he gave this gift to all the contractors, Order 17, giving them basic immunity from any of Iraq's laws. So none of these contractors are being held to the laws of Iraq at all. March 31st, 2004, one of the darkest days of our occupation in Iraq. The Fallujah incident, you'll remember this photo. Those contractors that were strung up on the bridge, turns out those were Blackwater contractors. They were ill-equipped. They'd only been on the job a few days, attempting to transport some cooking gear through a red zone, a zone that even military would not go into. They did not have their rear gunner. They did not have any maps. They were inadequately trained. Then what happened? We went in and took down the city of Iraq. The poor commander who in charge there, he wound up, his whole plan to win the hearts and souls of this and minds of this town was dashed. And then this changed the direction of the war. emboldened the anti-occupation resistance movement, and now it's where we are today. I imagine this single event is one of the most important events in the history of our occupation. But as bad as that event was, it's really the aftermath of that event that really brought a couple of big issues to light. They were sued by the families of the contractors, of the soldiers that they had hired. Blackwater claims they can't be sued by the families. They're part of the total force, military total force. They should be regarded as part of the military. However, if they kill someone over in Iraq, if you're in the military, you'll be court-martialed. If you're part of Blackwater, though, they are not part of the subject to the Code of Military Justice. This case is in process. It was referred to the Supreme Court, and most recently, just in the last week or two, this being the 1st of June, it's been referred to this into arbitration. And there's going to be 3 arbiters that, and this is supposedly not going to be revealed to the public what happens. Meanwhile, Representative Waxman continues to review the waste, fraud, and abuse of Blackwater and other contractors in Iraq. One of the most disturbing figures associated with Blackwater is this guy J. Cofer Black. Had a 28-year career in the CIA and a coordinator of counterterrorism from 2002 to 2004, roughly. He was criticized for not passing to the FBI the information about 2 9/11 hijackers that had entered the U.S. He later became the vice chair of Blackwater USA and now has joined Mitt Romney's campaign as senior advisor. I hope Mitt Romney doesn't make it, because if he does, Blackwater is going to be in charge. As I said, Blackwater seems to benefit every time the nation suffers a catastrophe, and one of those was Katrina, August 29, 2005. They were hired to suppress looting within New Orleans, our own country here. Earned $73 million through 2006 at the rate of $243,000 a day. They received $950 per day for each soldier, and then paid $350 to each soldier, pocketing $75 an hour that each soldier worked. Now, this so-called looting, the people I've talked to that were visited New Orleans at that time, these people were doing nothing more than looking for food and water. You didn't find people stealing that widescreen TV that you kept seeing the video of and so forth. Those stores were full of gear. People were looking for food and water, that's all. Well, they've been deployed now into the United States, and that makes people worry what the limitations are of this sort of a firm. They've also been now extending themselves to Blackwater North, a location you see here on the map about 100 to 125 miles west of Chicago. The reason they were able to get into this so easily is that they took over a training area that was already used for highway patrol training, I understand. Really got no public scrutiny. But of course the locals are now disturbed that Blackwater has set up shop and probably wanting to expand. They said no automatic weapons courses were going to be utilized, but my contact up there says he actually almost signed up for one. So we do know that they're offering it. There is no good way to limit these companies. There's no licensing set up for them. Even a preschool needs a license. But these facilities for training need no licenses at all, apparently. We're going to move to our own area now. In June of 2006, Blackwater opened a county project, and the project was with regard to an isolated valley. We learned later that they met with Diane Jacob, Duncan Hunter, in May and discussed the project, even discussing where it was going to be. The Potrero Planning Group discussed the item in October 2006, really with very little public scrutiny in terms of informing the public. No one really knew that they were going to be talking about it. And then they voted to approve it at the very next meeting. They did really no review of all of the issues that go into the typical review of a project like this, especially a huge 824-acre project. To give you an idea of where this is, it's about 94 from San Diego, and it's right in the middle of this picture here what we're talking about. The little white part in the middle, it has one arm that sticks above the Cleveland National Forest, which is the dark green area. It does border in one location. It's right next to some Hauser Wilderness additions that Senator Barbara Boxer had been proposing as additions to the Hauser Wilderness. This is right next to some very pristine and very sensitive areas of our backcountry. And in the satellite view, you can see the buildings where the chicken ranch was being operated. The small little pond that you see there is actually quite green and nice right now. We did earlier this year, I think about in April 2007, we heard news that some a condor was spotted flying up from Mexico. Now they established 10 condors down in Mexico, and they're progressing to establish themselves. And this area is a pathway for that, as well as other wildlife that will be severely impacted when we put in the sort of urban facility that they're proposing. We discovered that this valley is also quite near to the Pacific Crest Trail, originally pioneered by John Muir, which goes from the southern border with Mexico all the way up to the Canadian border along the Pacific Crest. And you can see it in this map here. The red line is the trail, and it's just over 3 miles from the valley. Now, gunfire fired out in the middle of an open area will travel approximately 20 kilometers, and which is roughly twice this far before it gets down to a conversational level. So these people along this trail are going to hear constant gunfire. Well, what are they going to put in this camp? It's 824 acres. They're not going to use all of it for the camp. They're going to try to reserve, of course, mitigate some of their destructive development by keeping some of the grazing areas. But they are planning to have 300 student soldiers there at any one time, coming in and staying for a week. 60 staff members on the facility. You see up at the top of that the little boxes along the top. Those are the firing ranges. They're planning to have 9, 10, 15 different types of ranges. Of course, each one differs in size and depends on how you want to add those up. So they've said lately, oh, we've decreased it from 9 to 8 and so forth. But actually, they can easily just slice the pizza into bigger slices and still have the same number of people. They haven't said that they're going to decrease the number of students. So I anticipate that they've just sliced the pizza into fewer slices to try to fool the public on this. What else? They're going to have live fire, fully ballistic, multi-level shoot houses. 2 and then another 15 of these shoot houses. So I guess a total of 17. They're going to have a 2-mile tactical driving track with a gasoline storage tank where they're going to train people to drive through very hostile territory, such as people driving through Baghdad. They're going to have a 350-foot diameter skid pad where people drive the cars in and skid around and try to still maintain control. A 400 diameter helipad, 400-foot diameter. I understand not all of that is actually paved over, but it is still listed that way in their list. This is, by the way, this is directly from the Blackwater proposal. They have a 33,000 square foot urban simulation training area. They say they're not going to use that helipad, but they do helicopter operations over in Baghdad. Here's a picture of a Blackwater helicopter. So I would anticipate that they are going to be using those facilities. Also in their project description, they talk about training towers, 2 of them, a 5-level and a 6-level, and I think those are probably something that they might be bringing up a fire gear to and trying to suppress a fire and learning about how to go up and down stairs. They're going to have ship simulators by bringing out a whole bunch of stacked shipping containers. So that's going to look real great in that valley. And then what is really mind-boggling is a armory building for storage of guns and ammunition. 18,000 square feet. That's almost a half an acre of guns and ammunition. Now, I've shown a little picture here of an armory area, which you can see a hell of a lot of guns and ammunition just sitting in this one area. And I'll tell you, that's nothing like 18,000 square feet. That's just probably several hundred square feet. And I don't know what they're planning to put in here, but it's a lot more than just a training facility. Well, that's not all they're putting in. They're putting in a bunch of buildings, 2 dormitory buildings. This is enough to take care of their 300 student soldiers there. 2 more classroom buildings, a defensive training building, a dining hall. You add up all these different buildings, and this is by their figures. You get 170,000 square feet of buildings. That's the same as 57 3,000 square foot homes. Now this area is zoned for 40-acre lots, and that means out of 824 acres you could put in 20 ranches if you wanted to fully populate this area. Those 20 ranches would have 20 homes, not 57. So it is very and they may not be 3,000 square feet either. That's very large. So we're talking about, and also in that number of homes, you're not going to end up having 300 people. 360 people, I should say. In essence, Blackwater West is a bad idea. To even entertain this project, the Department of Planning and Land Use basically had to lie to the public and to themselves by saying that this project can be put in an agricultural preserve because it's a utility. Now, if you go out to the man on the street and you say, what is a utility? He'll probably say, well, maybe a cell phone tower, maybe a power substation. Usually people don't live there. Instead, what we're talking about is more like a 300-room hotel with sewage, water, waste, traffic that's commensurate with that type of a development. Noise from 300 weapons, firing and driving track. You usually don't get that at a hotel. It's going to destroy our watershed, but even worse, the fire danger. Remember, I talked about that 18,000, almost half an acre of armory with arms and ammunition. Also that gasoline storage tank. It's going to be no match for the 200 to 300 foot flames that we saw at the Cedar fire. There's no way out of this valley. It's just going to be a death trap as the fire comes through and explodes this armory into a huge fireball. That's not the only reasons, though. You know, there's wildlife in this area that's going to be seriously impacted. The golden eagles nest nearby. As I said, they've sighted condors recently flying up from Mexico. This is really an irreplaceable valley. It's one of the chain of valleys starting in Descanso and all the way down. It's part of the habitat for wildlife. Really not a good idea to put a training camp in this sensitive area. You know, there's probably thousands of square miles of areas or old bases that are already ruined, where such a facility can be placed and not ruin this valley that doesn't need to be ruined. But further, mercenaries. Do we want to establish private armies that don't answer to any judicial institutions? They don't seem to want to follow civilian laws. They don't follow military laws. They don't follow any laws in Iraq. They pretty much follow nothing. And it's a very, very worrisome thing to say, well, as long as they can meet these planning use restrictions, then we ought to just turn our sights the other way and let them in. I don't think so. Just want you to take a look at this valley. I mean, this is one of the except for these chicken houses, which haven't been used in years, and they never should have been placed there anyway. It has one little set of houses that you can see in the distance. The hill right behind there is where they're going to be shooting their bullets. That is actually Bureau of Land Management public lands. At the top of that ridge is where the Cleveland National Forest begins. And looking out toward the left of this picture, you see that mountain in the distance. That's part of the Hauser Mountain, the Hauser Wilderness. That one mountain in the distance out there, that's near where the Pacific Crest Trail is located. This is just the wrong place for a boot camp, is what it comes down to. Regardless of what you feel about mercenary soldiers that don't need to follow any laws, if you think that's a great idea, this is still the wrong place for it. So this project was submitted to the Department of Planning and Land Use in June of 2006. The planning group talked about it in October. The next meeting was in December. They voted 7-0 to approve it, contingent on a live noise test. They were going to go out into the valley and shoot some guns and see if they could hear it in Potrero, which is just over the hill. Jan Hedlund, the new planning group member, was sworn in January. She's been the only opponent to the project, and we note that they conducted their vote prior to her being sworn in. One thing that happened is that Lori Spar, the attorney for Blackwater, at one meeting comes in the next meeting as a county employee working on their project. Now imagine an attorney pursuing a career as a lawyer, deciding to quit that and go back to working for the County Department of Planning and Land Use. Almost inconceivable. She was dropped after public outcry. Of course, they said there was nothing illegal, but just in case there was a perception of impropriety, we're going to put her on a different project. Well, you never would have done anything except for the public outcry. Of course, in March, when they were supposed to have their noise test, it was objected to by the owner, and it never did happen. The newspaper still publicized the 7-0 vote, and if you ask me, they probably never intended to have this noise test, at all. Well, just after that, at the beginning of April, they had the required scoping meeting. It was held at the County Department of Planning and Land Use in the middle of San Diego area. It had amazingly high security, searches almost down to strip searching everybody, high firepower. They had closed the parking lot, they said, as a mistake. When I asked them at the end, I said, why did you close this public parking lot? You should have let the protesters park here. Oh, that was a mistake. It was the private security firm. Well, later we got rumors that some kind of a bomb was placed under planner Greg Chris's car in Murrieta. And they were trying to blame the Stop Blackwater people for putting a bomb up there. I haven't gotten any word from law enforcement to date, but I'll tell you, these protesters, they don't know how to make a bomb. I'll tell you who does, though: Blackwater, and they probably did it to cast aspersions on the Stop Blackwater movement and make us seem like we're somehow dangerous. At that scoping meeting, there was over 100 people that eventually got into the room. A lot of people were turned away, but amazingly enough, the Potrero planning group decided that there wasn't anything to work on or talk about for April, and also it was very difficult to have a meeting so close to Easter, even though it was a week after Easter. And plus, the chair said he wasn't going to be in town. Well, I called him, and he was at home on that day, so it's hard to believe what he was talking about. The week after that, we had Earth Fair in Balboa Park. We had over half dozen booths there, distributing Stop Blackwater literature and petitions. Then the week after that, we had just before that, we had the San Diego County Democratic Party approved a resolution. We had a meeting with Bob Filner, the congressional representative for the 51st District, which includes the Potrero area, and he committed to try to block this at the federal level. Well, we had one other tactic trying to do here, which is at this California Democratic State Convention, California State Democratic Convention, maybe I should say, submitted a proposed party resolution. It was worked on by the Sierra Club. It was reviewed by Bob Filner in Boxer's office, but it was considered late, not timely, and so it had to have unanimous consent to move forward and be heard. It was objected by one person, this Ted Smith III, who, amazingly enough, was also involved in requesting a quorum count on the last day. But that last day is when they do the business of the party, and when they take up these various resolutions. Resolutions, everything from impeachment all the way down to fair wages for custodial employees. And he did a quorum count, which means count everybody in the room and make sure you have at least 50% of the delegates there, as they were trying to consider Iraq occupation funding resolutions to stop the funding. However, even though we did get this objection, Filner said that he would take a look at this resolution and maybe base some federal legislation on it. Well, back in March, as soon as we found out about these issues going on in Potrero, we had a meeting here in the Rancho San Diego area, actually, and we had the Save Our Forest and Ranch Land represented by Duncan McFetrich come and give us a talk about these valleys, these very sensitive valleys up in the mountains. And he brought in a book on the 25th of March, which was published on March 20th by Jeremy Scahill, entitled Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. Now, we couldn't have asked for a better book to come on the market. Immediately I got on the phone and scheduled Jeremy Scahill to come into town in conjunction with the Peace Resource Center, and we were able to get him scheduled in for the Unitarian Church, where we had 425 people attend. You can see in the picture. Then the next day he went out to Potrero and actually visited Potrero, and then later that day we had 350 people at the La Mesa Community Center, only limited by severe restrictions that were put into place on us by the fire marshal, who was standing right there and had to make sure that everybody had a seat and so forth. Well, I'll tell you, Blackwater, they've got their inside people who are putting limits on virtually anything that we do here. But we were very, very successful. We had to turn 50 people away from that event in La Mesa. And by the way, I recommend that you get that book if you get a chance. Our next event was this, finally the Potrero Planning Group decided they'd have a meeting in May. It was a packed house. Media was present. 3 sheriff's units were in attendance. Only a few protesters outside, but a lot of bright green T-shirts saying "Stop Blackwater." The group was faced with petitions with 300 signatures. There's only 850 residents. There's 425 registered voters in the Potrero area. And they had 300 signatures on these petitions saying that they would like them to rescind their approval and re-vote on it. So they did agree to do that. So there's a one win. The second thing that happened in this meeting, which is very significant, is that 6 members of the planning group were served with recall notices. Carl Meyer is the head of the proponents for a recall. This group obviously didn't take into account much of what the public in the area had to say about things. They didn't really review anything. Really, the only person doing a very good job, I have to say, is Jan Hedlund. She's analyzed the issues. She's transcribed all of the meetings by hand from the tape. Just amazing. One just really astounding thing at this Potrero Planning Group meeting on May 10th, though, was that Mary Johnson, one of the planning group members, had the gall, the audacity to wear a Blackwater T-shirt with the Blackwater logo on it while she's considering their application in front of the public. I just cannot believe it. The chair, Gordon Hammers, acts like he represents Blackwater in these meetings. But one of the most interesting thing was one of the questions from the crowd came up, and they said, Gordy, can you explain why Blackwater should come to Potrero? And he said no, he couldn't explain it. And at the same time, he's out at Kiwanis Club meetings and other places speaking as if he's representing Blackwater. Just after that May meeting, we got anonymous tip from somebody that there was another facility in our area up in Alpine, a place called Covert Canyon. You can check the website yourself at covertcanyon.com. They received absolutely no approvals from any county officials for this. The owner, Mark Halcon, denies any Blackwater deal, although he's mentioned as an agent for Blackwater in some paperwork that we found. What is he doing? He's got pistol, rifle, shotgun, submachine gun. He claims to have Department of Defense approval for these shooting ranges up to 50 caliber. He even says he has an airstrip and a helicopter landing zones, and he's already had several helicopters land there. After tipping off the county to this, the facility, the operation has been shut down pending permits. Now, the surprising thing is the Department of Planning and Land Use says they won't find the owner for doing all this illegal grading and destruction of the area and what's supposed to be an agricultural preserve. Why is it that someone may put up a fence in the wrong place, or maybe extend their garage or something, things that don't really hurt things too much, and they get fines, and yet this guy who puts in a 160-acre mercenary type training camp doesn't get any fines at all? It's just breathtaking. The key vote in this issue is going to come to Diane Jacob. She's the county supervisor in the 2nd District for the County of San Diego. There are 5 on the Board of Supervisors for the county, but she is the one in this district, and they tend to vote her way. She did have a meeting on May 18th. It was called the Backcountry Revitalization Meeting. It's held in Campo. They were to talk about capital improvement projects in the backcountry. Turns out a lot of people showed up to talk about Blackwater, and surprisingly enough, she would not allow any public comment on Blackwater. She said the meeting is not subject to the Brown Act, which requires a public comment period, and she says that supervisors can't discuss or even hear comments about a project once it's been submitted to the Department of Planning and Land Use. So somehow she has the right to censor the public and not allow the public to make comments on things. Turns out that we have documentation that she met with Duncan Hunter in Blackwater in May and was told about the project site and was discussed many of the details in a private meeting with Blackwater and Representative Duncan Hunter. It's not even in his area. Why would Duncan Hunter be involved in this if it's not even in his district? Now, the fight isn't over yet. We've just passed the deadline for submitting comments to the Department of Planning and Land Use, which they are required to accept comments after they provide what's called a notice of preparation, that they're starting to prepare a environmental impact report. That deadline was May 25th, after being extended by 30 days since they had given bad information on fax numbers and the like. They received about 12 inches of comments, a huge stack of papers against this thing. Later in July, the Potrero Planning Group will re-vote on the issue. Now, the members that are there will probably vote in favor again. They don't seem to be changing their mind, but it's an advisory vote only. But more significantly, it looks like the recall election is imminent, so these guys will be kicked out. They won't be able to run again, and we'll have a new slate of people who, I'm sure there'll be a Blackwater slate and a pro and a con, but I'm sure that the community is going to elect a slate that is against this Blackwater proposal. The final hearing will be coming before, first it comes before the planning commissioners, and then it goes before the County Board of Supervisors, probably near the end of the year or the beginning of next year, that is 2008. The party resolution that we put forward and was hiccuped a little bit during the convention will still be processed probably at the state party e-board meeting. Okay, we're coming toward the end of the presentation. I'd like to ask you to take a bit of action. First of all, I want to suggest that you visit the website, stopblackwater.net, easy to remember. Go there and watch the videos, watch the presentation by Jeremy Scahill. Certainly buy the book Blackwater and read it if you care to really learn about this company. I suggest that you take a look at the pbs.org Frontline special, which you can get online, called Private Warriors. It's very good, and it's mostly about Blackwater. I brought some petitions in today. I'd like to ask you to sign those. If I'm not in present, then I've given those to your host. Get on our email list. It's on the website, describes how to do that. We'd like to suggest any groups should join our coalition for future joint action. Get on our list of groups so that we can put this coalition together. Finally, and my next slide is about citizens oversight projects, and really we wouldn't have been involved in this if it weren't for this COPS program. The reason that we got involved in this is because of citizens oversight projects, or COPS program, and it's based on this premise. As a citizen in a democracy, it is your duty to oversee the entire government. Now, plainly that's an impossible task, but if we can get many citizens just donate a little bit of their time to observe 1 or 2 meetings a month of just one local board, council, or planning group, whatever it may be, school board, water board, there's a lot of little groups that are officials, and they get almost no citizen involvement at all. By getting that citizen in the room, we can stop the rampant cronyism and giveaways to friends of politicians and insiders. The media is not going to help us with this. They are already being paid off by they're corporate controlled, and they're not going to be able to go to all of these meetings anyway. It comes down to the citizens. We're expanding nationwide, and we're just starting to get in touch with what's required and how do we go about dealing with issues such as Blackwater, such as videos that were illegally being played in the middle of El Cajon on the government access channel. These things wouldn't have come up had we not started and be observant. As soon as we started doing this, these types of things like Blackwater came out. Now, Blackwater, when they came to Potrero, they thought that they could just ram this down their throat and there would be maybe a little bit of half-hearted opposition. Well, what they found is fierce opposition from the local community, and with the help of citizens oversight, getting together the website, presentations like this one, the various videos, we've been able to give them a lot more firepower against these big guns that are really trying to invade our country. Blackwater amounts to, under our own noses, an invasion in our country of extremist right-wing and extreme Christian dogma. They want to take over our country, and it's very scary to see them coming in here. They've got their hands in Mitt Romney's campaign. One of the latest things that we've seen is it also ties in with the Sunrise Power Link. The new proposal goes right over the Blackwater proposed area. They're going to be bringing power into Blackwater, a huge amount of it. What do they need all that power for? We don't know. These things are hooked together, and if you connect the dots, you'll see that this is something that we really have to worry about. But citizens oversight, we've got to give it a try, because we've got to get in control of this rampant corruption that's taken our country and basically has turned it in the wrong direction. Come to citizensoversight.org and you can get more information there.